something I like to call the law of intention and decision. Now, I don't believe in all that law of attraction garbage. Because that just seems like a bunch of hocus pocus, mumbo jumbo kind of stuff. But I'm going to talk about something that actually really does happen. Uh, a principle, as it were. And, uh, and we find this principle not stated in those words, but we find the idea of it in Scripture. In Galatians chapter 6, verse 7, it says, "Be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man sows, that shall he also reap." And it's funny how we go through life, we do things, and we expect not to reap the consequences of what we've done. And we go through life and we do stuff, and we think that everything's just going to continue as if we hadn't done anything wrong. And don't get me wrong, thank God for the times where God doesn't let us reap the consequences of our actions. But there's a whole lot in life that you're going to, that every action is going to have some kind of consequence, some kind of result. Every decision has some kind of result. And as I like to say, just like faith without works is dead, and intention without a decision is just a wish. And this is a problem for a lot of us. We're trying to take hold of our destiny. And especially those of us who believe in the prophetic, my goodness, it gets ridiculous. People want a prophecy every week about their destiny, but they're not making any decisions to move toward it. And that having been said, I'd like you to turn your Bibles to Galatians chapter 4. And let me get there myself too. And when you have it, let me know. Somebody say amen. I'm kidding. But at least let me know that you've got it. And Father, I thank you for your word. I thank you for your falling on good ground. I thank you for touching the hearts and minds of those who will be listening, that they would receive a word in season, and that you would set a watch over my mouth, that I would not say anything untoward, unkind, unscriptural, unprofitable, but rather that you would use me to speak as the oracle of God, and to give your people something that will help them to become who you intended them to be. In Jesus' name, amen. Now I'm just going to continue as if nothing is wrong. Galatians chapter 4. Now I say that the heir, as long as he is a child, differs nothing from a servant, though he be Lord of all, but is under tutors and governors until the time appointed of the Father. Even so, we, when we were children, were in bondage under the elements of the world. But when the fullness of time was come, God sent forth his Son, made of woman, made under the law, to redeem those that were under the law, that we might receive the adoption of sons. We're going to talk about our kingdom identity, but with particular emphasis on this thing. A child's not better than a slave, even though he is the heir, because he's a kid. He can't really tell everybody what to do because he doesn't even know what to do. And a lot of us are like this with regard to our destiny. And, the same apostle also wrote, when I was a child, I spoke as a child. In 1 Corinthians 13:11. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. One of the biggest differences you'll see between a child and a grown man is how they make decisions. Or at least there should be a difference. Sometimes there isn't, and that's a problem. You see a grown man with the impulsiveness of a little boy and the hormones of a man, you're going to see some trouble. That's usually where you get somebody with no self-control, and they're usually violent. But go figure. Most of us we're not well equipped to make decisions. We don't even know if there is such a thing as what I could like to call the law of intention and decision. But there is. Like I said, an intention without a decision is just a wish. You can say you intend to lose weight, but you don't start working out, you don't change your diet, guess what? You're still going to be the same fat little person you were before. It's not going to change. I wanted to get back in shape, so guess what? I go to the gym, I work out, lifting weights. And it hurts my feelings because of all the nerve damage. I can't lift like I used to, but I'm still doing it. And I'm making progress. So that's an example of a decision. You have not decided anything if you're not taking action. Don't you dare tell me you've made a decision, you didn't take action. That's not a decision, that's a wish. Now, like I said, I'm not a believer in what people like to call the law of attraction. Because people look at it almost like something, it's like something mystical or something ridiculous. And I prefer to frame a philosophy of abundance in clearer terms more conducive to a practical and more responsible approach to achievement. And I've realized over the years that the best things that I've ever accomplished, whether in business and creativity or my personal life, they were always started by intentions, and they were manifested only when my decisions matched those intentions. For example, when I worked on Wall Street, my first big client, which was a $45 million 401k plan for a broadcasting company, that came about because I'd committed myself to a firm intention of not just succeeding on Wall Street, but I wanted to really outperform my peers. Partially because when I first started there, long story short, I almost got fired for wearing this bright blue suit, the bright red shirt, red shoes, and it happened to be the same day as the day the first Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire came out. So guess what they nicknamed me? Spidey. And they were kind of making fun of me. So, they'd say, "Hey, Spidey, what's going on?" And they do, the web shooting thing at me. And I say, "I'm slinging webs. I'm catching clients. I'm going to outperform everybody in this firm put together." And so I wanted to be the highest producer in the firm. That was my intention. But I also realized at the same time I wasn't anywhere near as good as most of my fellow brokers. Most of them were better salesmen than me. And I knew it. And it became obvious very, very quickly. And but then I realized that some of the companies whose CEOs I was calling to try to get them to buy stocks and all that, other companies had big retirement plans that weren't doing very well at the time. This was 2002. It was the worst bear market since the Great Depression. Companies can announce that they quadrupled their profits and their stock would still go down. It was a bad, bad market. And those were the easiest sales of my entire life. Easiest sales I ever made. They were big accounts. Now, intention, and I'm not saying this to brag, I'm saying that this happened because of my intention and the decisions I made to support that intention. Intention influences thoughts. And because it influences your thoughts, it creates focus. Focus then allows us to become aware of opportunities, ideas, and strategies that were probably available to us all along, but it went unnoticed. And to some of us, it'll seem like we attracted it. You didn't attract it. It was there the whole time. A lot of times God has put something right under your nose and you didn't see it because the decisions you're making are pointing you in the wrong direction. The decisions you're making are influencing your focus, so you're not focused on the right thing. So intention creates focus, decision leads to action. Action produces results. Now, this may seem like a bit of an oversimplification, but that's how it's always worked for me, and it's what I've observed in the lives of others. You're going to reap what you sow. What are you doing? Everything you do is going to have some kind of consequence, some kind of result. Now, there's some instances where intention and decision will work together, and it'll seem like they're attracting people and opportunities for it, and we may examine those things later. But let me say for now that it's absolutely vital to your vision, to your purpose, to your destiny, that your intentions are married to your decisions. Any intention that you can't put together with the decision, not only is it a wish, it's a waste of time. Now, too many people, they just spend their day daydreaming about ministry or daydreaming about their destiny, daydreaming about a business, not taking any action. You're wasting your time. And here's the thing. When your intentions are married to your decisions, both perception and perspective change as a result. Your actions will move you toward your desired outcome. And then it'll seem almost like miracles of opportunity will occur. Just things will seem to fall in your lap, not because it wasn't that sometimes sometimes it is a miracle. Sometimes God is helping you out. But here's the thing: a lot of times God is not going to give you the favor you're looking for because you haven't made the right decisions. My goodness, God tells the prophet to get up and go to Zarephath. You think God would have provided for him if he went to Jericho? Imagine if Elijah instead had gone to some widow he knew over in Jericho. Well, I like this widow. God was going to God was going to command a widow woman to sustain me anyway. I like this widow. And you go do that? No, she wouldn't have had nothing. They would both starved. You've got to go where God wants you to be. And so a lot of us, because we're making bad decisions, or some of us have very poor decision-making ability. That's why we're in the position we're in. Or we have good decision-making ability, but we just don't use it. But when you are finally marrying your intentions to your decisions, and you got to have right intentions and right decisions, you will become aware of opportunities that you didn't notice before. For example, years ago, I decided to conduct a bit of an experiment with what I call the law of intention and decision. I was at a writing seminar. I was working on writing a book, and this book's actually almost done now. So I decided to attend this seminar. It was about writing a book to promote a business. It's one of the greatest things you can do to promote a business is write a book. You ever hear that saying? He wrote the book on it. You write a book, people think you know what you're talking about. But anyway, I was at this seminar, and they were trying to show everybody that writing a book is not that hard. And what they did was they did this exercise where the instructor would have the crowd pick out words. 5 just seemingly random words. And they were Kazakhstan, tacos, squishy, platypus, and dictator. Those 5 words. And so they told everybody to write a story using those 5 words. Doesn't matter what the story is, those 5 words have to be in it. So people wrote some stories. And they were going to have some volunteers read their story aloud. Now, my intention of even being there was I was trying to network. I was trying to find some meeting planners because I knew there would be some meeting planners there to see if I could get somebody to hook me up with some gigs as a public speaker. But I didn't want to work the room. I don't like working the room. That's not where I'm good. I'm bad with it. One-on-one, person to person, I'm socially awkward. I don't like doing that. I don't like approaching people with a business card and all that. So my intention, all right, God bless you. God keep you. My intention was to get people to come to me. That way I don't have to work the room. That way I don't have to worry about somebody not being interested in what I have to say and all that other stuff that can potentially happen. And so what I did was, my plan was, as soon as they asked for a volunteer, my hand was going to be the first one to shoot up in the air. Because I know most people are afraid of public speaking. I'm not. I prefer it. Give me a microphone and a place to stand. I'm more comfortable doing that than probably anything else. And so I wrote the stupidest story I could think of at the time. I deliberately made it stupid. It was a story about a platypus who overthrew the government of Kazakhstan and became a dictator because the tacos were too squishy. Like I said, it was stupid. And so as soon as they asked for a volunteer, my hand shot up. And I started reading my stupid story that I wrote, that I deliberately made stupid. And what ended up happening, because I'm a soft-spoken guy, people were saying they couldn't hear me. I knew what was going to happen. I know I'm soft-spoken. I planned this. Guess what they did? Come up here and take the microphone. Well, thank you. Don't mind if I do. And I go up and I take the microphone. I read my story. Everybody is laughing hysterically at my ridiculous story. And then they took a break after that particular segment. Guess who ran out of business cards that day? Guess who everybody wanted to talk to? Guess who everybody was crowding around so much that the guy who hosted the event was a little mad because the attention was off him? See, intention and decision. It wasn't some like magic attraction. See, what I did there was I took an opportunity to let the people there know who I was, that one of them actually wanted me to speak at every event she puts together. Now I didn't tell that story to just brag about how good a speaker I am, because like I said, I deliberately made the story stupid. I don't think that's really why people approached me anyway. I believe first that it was my intention to attract the attention of good contacts for my speaking business. I came across as a professional speaker who could engage an audience, even with a pretty silly story. I came across as funny, possibly a little bit likable and charismatic, and that aroused everybody's interest. They wanted to know, who is this guy? What does this guy do? You know how many people ask me, what do you do? Yeah. Oh, man. And a lot of them were specifically looking for speakers who were engaging and funny. Go figure. And I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't done that. When you match an intention to a decision, you will uncover opportunities that you would otherwise not even discover. And also, people will become aware of you. There are people that God has assigned to help you, but they don't even know you exist, because you're not letting the world know what you got to offer in any constructive way. What are you delivering of value? Now, I want to define intention for you. Now, intention, the dictionary calls it an act or instance of determining mentally upon some action or result. So an intention, we must understand, occurs in the mind, where resides our will, our emotions, our intellect. To master our intentions, then, we have to gain a better understanding of these things. First, think of something that you did, or maybe something you didn't do, or something you said or didn't say. If you find this first step a little bit tricky, try to remember a specific action or a decision of yours that included one of the following things: being good or trying to be nice, telling someone no, agreeing to do something that somebody asked you to do, using force in some way, telling a joke or being funny, giving someone feedback or criticism, expressing your disapproval or annoyance. Now, on a piece of paper, you can describe in each instance what you said and what you did and the intention that you had at the time. Because sometimes it's easier to pick up out your intentions after something has happened. Then, think about whether you may have had other intentions and write those down. It's like J.P. Morgan used to say, people usually have two reasons for the things they do: the real reason and one that sounds good. Now, were any of your intentions, when you think of any of these things, let's say, for example, think of a time where you had to tell somebody off, or you had to bring some criticism to somebody, you had to correct somebody. Were any of your intentions different from the one that sounded good? It's an important question to ask. Because sometimes we go tell somebody off, oh, they had it coming. I was trying to set things straight. And the truth was, yeah, you were trying to set things straight. And that was the reason that sounded good. But the real reason was you were just mad. You were annoyed. You were irritated. You had your feelings hurt or whatever it was. But very often, we don't even acknowledge our true intention. Now, when you recognize one of these situations where you did have an intention that wasn't the one that sounds good, did it make you want to change your intention or your action? Did you start justifying what you said or what you did? Like I like to say, if you got to justify it, you probably shouldn't have done it. You might want to write down thoughts that came to mind while you were thinking of this. As one wise man once said, if you got to justify something, you probably shouldn't do it. Now, that particular little bit of wisdom isn't necessarily universally applicable, but it's a good rule of thumb to use when you're reviewing your intentions and your decision-making process. Some of us don't even know how to make a decision, but we want our destiny. It's like the guy that wants God to give him a mega church, but doesn't even know how to make micro church decisions. Guess what? God's not going to give it to you because you're not ready. And part of what we're aiming at tonight is to help you understand the relationship between your intentions and decisions, but also help you to form better intentions and to make better decisions. In a word, to help you grow up. Now, especially for those of you who are kind of stuck in your vision right now or frustrated with what seems to be an inability to get to that next level or whatever you want to call it, what I've just described will help you get a better understanding of the decisions you have been making. And I would recommend that particular method, what we just described, writing down what your intentions were at the time and then analyzing those intentions. I would recommend using that method to review the major decisions that you've made in the last year at the very least. And once you've done so, there's some questions you should probably ask yourself. Here's some of them. Was this intention conducive to the realization of my vision? Was this conducive to the destiny I believe God has called me to? Were my intentions consistent with trusting the truth? If these intentions were publicly known, would they inspire trust or suspicion? Now that's a great question to ask yourself. If people knew what my real intention is, would this inspire them to trust me or to suspect me? Now, what action did those intentions lead to? Now, once you have a basic understanding, at least, of your own intentions and how you tend to arrive at them, because you gotta recognize how you're making decisions. One of the biggest problems we have, or at least what I found among emerging leaders in the body, is they have very little time or patience for introspection. Nobody wants to examine themselves. And guess what? God is not going to trust you with what He's got for you until you can. The Bible does say what? Let every man examine himself. So once you start gaining some ability to evaluate your own intentions and how you're arriving at those intentions, you're going to be better at evaluating the decisions you've been making and better at evaluating decisions you need to make. Now, that said, let's examine intention a bit further before we get to its intimate relationship with decision. Now, if you end up doing the exercise I recommended there, you'll be able to see that your intentions frame your mindset. They give direction to your perception, and they influence the decisions you make. And every decision, in turn, has consequences or results, whatever you want to call it, which then often influence your future intentions and decisions. So without intention, purpose is impossible. I'll say that again. Without intention, purpose is impossible. You don't have a purpose without intention. God never calls somebody to really wander aimlessly. Now, there are several types of intention that I'd like to discuss with you tonight. And I'm sure there's lots of other types, but I do like to keep things relatively simple. There's what I call goal intentions. This is where people tend, I intend to achieve X. Like, I want to lose 10 pounds. Or, I want to bench press 300 pounds. That's a goal intention. There's a desire to accomplish a goal, but this isn't necessarily accompanied by intentions which will lead to action. There can even be a clearly defined goal, but the intention may not have an equally clear plan of the actions necessary to achieve it, or that plan is enacted upon. So, like you look at New Year's resolutions that people have that almost nobody ever keeps, or that the cute girl that I liked in college, but I meant to speak to, but I never got around to it. Stuff like that. There was a goal intention there, but it was never followed through on. And then there's what I call implementation intentions. Now, this type of intention might best be expressed as I intend to perform goal-directed behavior Y when I encounter situation X. When I first went to college, I was a pretty skinny guy. I had a goal intention of putting on some muscle in the hope of doing better with the ladies, and I paired that with the implementation intention of getting up early in the morning to go to the gym. And of course, eventually I learned that communication skills and confidence and charisma were a lot more important than muscles. But anyhow, implementation intentions are the heart of all strategy. So you can't just have a goal intention. You've got to have an implementation intention. You have to have. It's great to have a goal intention. Let's say you want to bench press 300 pounds, but you also have to have an intention how you're going to pursue that goal. Then there's what I call productive intentions. These are intentions which are conducive to the achievement of a goal and include implementation intentions, and they can include what I call deliberative intentions. An excellent example would be determining to study successful people in your field in the interest of reproducing their type of success in your own life. Another would be committing to take a definite number of actions every day in the direction of a particular goal or set of goals. Deliberative intentions, on the other hand, these are intentions which express a willingness toward an action or a decision, but may not include a commitment to that action or decision. Driving, for example, is filled with deliberative intentions. One fine, slushy Toronto morning, I was intent on coasting through an intersection in my car, which at the time was a BMW X5. They were awesome in the snow. But anyway, probably the best car I've ever driven in winter. But my intention was to get to just coast through that intersection. I already had my foot off the gas, and I was going down the hill. I was just going to coast. But that's when someone in a Mini Cooper decided to turn left right in front of me. She made a left turn on a red light in the slush. What she was thinking, I don't know. And now I was already entering the intersection when she did this. While I was willing to get through the intersection, I had to engage in the implementation intention of hitting my brakes and swerving to avoid hitting the tiny little vehicle whose driver apparently lacked any kind of good sense. And fortunately, the X5 is great at stopping, and I had really good winter tires, so I was able to stop. So my deliberative intention was to get through the intersection. But then somebody came along and I had to stop and I had to make another decision. Now there's what I call unproductive or counterproductive intentions. And all of us have engaged in these, whether we'll admit it or not. In the early days of my sales career, I'd frequently involve myself in activities that that really had nothing to do with my goals, like taking a long lunch because I wanted to relax, or other people in the office would find any number of reasons to stay away from their desks for extended periods of time because they wanted to avoid the rejection that is pretty much 95% of what you're going to experience in phone sales. And some of us would even tape a sign to the back of the chair that said CPA, Certified Phone Avoider. And it was one of our ways of mocking somebody who was afraid of being on the phone. And it was kind of silly. But here's the thing. One of the most important, it was one of our ways to shame people into staying focused. And one of the most important tasks you can accomplish in your assessment of your own attention habits is determining which intentions are either unproductive or counterproductive, and then doing whatever you need to do to wean yourself away from those types of intentions. And all of us have had them at some point or other. And that having been said, now we can see in those kind of examples that intentions may at times need to be revised or even discarded depending on what kind of intentions they are. We might also consider that productive intentions are always deliberate. Productive intentions are always deliberate. There's a good reason why every so-called success guru will say something to the effect that success is intentional. It is. Success is not accidental. Many of you who might be listening to this later may be realizing right now that some of your intentions have actually been hindering your achievement. Some of your intentions have actually been counterproductive, and some of your decisions certainly have been. And if this is the case, I want to congratulate you because you're now much closer to the realization of your destiny than you were before. Because now you realize that you can choose to do something about your intentions. Your intentions don't have to stay the same. Your decisions don't have to stay the same. As I like to say, you don't have to live in defeat. Now, let's talk about how to set productive intentions. How do you come about a productive intention? Here are some things that will help you. The first is to be clear about what it is that you're after, what it is that you want. Or in this case, because it's your destiny in Christ, what does God want from your life? What is God expecting of you? What did he call you to? One of the greatest killers of great dreams is a lack of clarity. If your overall vision isn't fully formed, that's fine. Keep it simple for now, but at least be clear about what's the big picture here. The second thing you do is to write it down. There's tremendous power in writing down an intention. Just as writing down goals improves your likelihood of accomplishing them. In fact, they say that people who write down their goals are 3 times more likely to achieve them. Because usually people who write down goals intend to do something about them. And now there's several things which happen when you write down an intention. The act of writing it down creates something almost like a written contract with yourself. For most people, this helps them to inspire the kind of motivation that they need to act on the intention. It becomes easier to clearly define the intention in greater detail, because especially if you're writing it down by hand, because the neurological connection between your brain and your hand and the fine movements you have to make to write something down, basically you are using more of your brain to do that, and your mind is engaged in more detail, so it's a lot easier to clearly define the intention. There's also less of a need to have to remember the intention. It's like Jim Rohn used to say, never trust your memory, write things down. And because there's less of a need to try to remember the intention, you have the freedom to focus on the decisions that you need to make to manifest your intention. Another thing that will happen is your creativity will be stimulated. When you write down an intention, it's really not hard to ask yourself what you'll need to do to make it happen. It's another useful thing. Write down questions. What do I need to do for this to happen? Now consider something else. If somebody asks you a question, it's almost impossible to not think of a probable answer. If I ask you what color is the sky, I don't need to be a prophet. I know you just thought blue. If I say, well, how many legs does a dog have? I know you thought four. If I say, do I have a beard? I know you thought yes. You see what I'm getting at? It's human nature to try to answer a question. And so I always tell my coaching clients, when you're writing down an intention, write at least 5 questions about each intention. You don't have to try to answer them right away, but write them down. And you can always get help from someone else to answer them. But anyhow, the third thing you can do is to share your intentions with others who are going to hold you accountable in a meaningful and supportive way. Not just anybody, because sometimes we make the mistake of choosing people to hold us accountable who don't like us, who aren't supportive of what we're doing. That's not the right person, because the minute you mess up, that person's going to throw it in your face. They're going to discourage you. They're going to mock you. They're going to waste your time. Pick people who really care about you and who are willing to hold you accountable in a meaningful and supportive way. I look at this as a kind of insurance against our own human tendency to get lazy and careless. In my own case, my main accountability partner is my wife. When I wanted to write a novel, she just wouldn't let me slide. And not only did I get it done in 5 months, but it hit the bestseller list a few times. At times oh goodness, she was a tough editor. She's like, no, rewrite the sentence. Rewrite that, and then, oh boy. Now, in addition to personal accountability, there's another strategy for setting a powerful intention that I like to use. A friend of mine, and he's also a business author, Jerry Robert, likes to call it the power of a public promise. And we both like to encourage our clients to publicly announce an intention in their social media and whatever other channels that they have access to. And now there's some intentions that should stay private, but some things are good to make public. If for no other reason that it's a great way to create a whole crowd of people who will hold you accountable, cheer you on, and maybe even help you. Fourth thing you can do to set a proper intention is to do something right away which demonstrates your commitment to that intention. And this is particularly important when it comes to goal intentions. Like Mary Poppins once said, once begun is half done. Like the man said, I'm Mary Poppins, y'all. Anyway, bad joke. If you've seen Guardians of the Galaxy 2, you'll know what I'm talking about. Despite the fact that none of us, we're probably not going to be flying away with a magic umbrella like Mary Poppins, but there's a good deal of truth to that statement. You'll never manifest an intention if you don't get started. It's like Les Brown likes to say, you don't have to be great to get started, but you do have to get started to be great. And in fact, if you have an intention you're thinking of while I'm talking about this, when we're done here, get off the broadcast and go do something related to that intention. Don't wait. Do something immediately. The fifth thing you can do to form proper intentions is what I call pat yourself on the back and then kick yourself in the pants. Always acknowledge that you did what you said you would do. And then ask yourself what the next step is. For example, this book that I have almost done, when I was writing it, I had an intention of getting on as many radio shows as possible So I committed to calling and emailing radio talk show hosts to at least get a dialogue started. And it took me about a week to schedule, I think it was about 260 radio appearances. And before the book was even done, I had over 500 radio appearances. And then I decided that the next step was to send a personal thank you to each host. Why? I knew that if I did that, most people that come on their show never send them a thank you. Because they're just there to promote their book or whatever it is that they're selling. And they're kind of grateful, but they don't really show it. And guess what? I know that. And so because I sent a thank you, guess who they remember? Guess who they want on their show again because he's such a nice guy. And don't do this, insincerely. I do it sincerely because I am grateful. They didn't have to have me on the show. They didn't have to help me like that. And so I often tell them, and I've said this at the beginning of this broadcast, and I say this a lot to people, clients and non-clients, an intention without a decision is just a wish. There's a movie, one of my favorite movies is Grumpy Old Men. And there's a scene where the wise and somewhat cheeky grandfather, there's the father of the main character, they're in the store and they're doing grocery shopping. The old man, who's like in his 90s, grabs a pack of bacon. And his son, who's also old by now, he's the grumpy old man, doesn't want him to buy it. And he says, "Dad, I wish you wouldn't eat that stuff." And his father says to him, "Well, you can wish in one hand and crap in the other and see which one fills up first." Now, that's kind of a crude illustration, but he makes a great point there. One of those hands is going to fill up first, and it ain't going to be the wishing hand. So it's great to have productive, implementative intentions, but every intention has to have a decision to accompany it, or it's useless. Now, this having been said, we have to further understand that a decision always involves action. And, as my friend and best-selling author Raymond Aaron likes to say, if you haven't taken action, you haven't decided anything. So the law of intention and decision requires you, as I've said before, to pair your intentions with appropriate decisions in order to produce results. For example, if you intend to develop your upper body strength but never bother to exercise, that intention is never going to see the light of day. A few years ago, after some back surgery, I put on some weight and had great difficulty getting it off because the medication they gave me slowed down my metabolism because they injected some stuff into my spine. And so I decided to use the law of intention and decision to get back to a better weight. Now, it was good to have the intention of becoming fit again. I knew this wasn't going to matter if I didn't define this intention clearly. My implementation intention was to exercise every morning, more specifically, to do push-ups with my hands positioned higher than my shoulders to put tension on my abdominal muscles, and that way I could kill two birds with one stone. And I took action every day, and after several months, I could do more than 90 push-ups. The result? I dropped back to what I weighed when I was 20, with the same waist size and chest measurement, but with bigger arms. And yes, I just flexed my arm, but my arms are actually bigger than they were then. Now, in the writing of this book that I'm actually teaching out of, one of my intentions was to market the book by way of radio interviews. And I knew this wasn't going to happen by itself. I paired that intention with the decision to contact a whole lot of radio hosts to see whether they'd have me on the program. And when I did that, I'd only written the first 2 sentences of the book. They didn't know that. I wanted to see if I could pull that off without even really writing the book yet. And so when I'd only written the first 2 sentences, I had scheduled like 260 radio show appearances. Now, why did I do that? The reason why I did that was, even though I hadn't written the book yet, or hadn't finished writing the book yet, every time I made contact with a host or a producer, my passion for my vision came through, and it sparked their interest enough to have me on the show. If I had not taken action, you think they would have called me? You think they would have ever heard of me? No. Very unlikely that they would have ever called me. And you know, a few years ago, I also had the intention of getting a particularly large client. There was a client I wanted, and my website, sometimes we get 20,000 page views in a day, which is not gigantic, but for the type of website it is, that's actually pretty good. But I knew that I couldn't count on clients that big randomly coming to my website. That's not going to happen. So was it possible that they might find me that way? Sure, but the odds really weren't in my favor. So I decided to cold call them. And rather than try to get through a series of gatekeepers, like their secretaries and all that, I did some research to find out who the CFO of the organization was. This took me from deliberative intention to implementation intention. Next, I left this man a very carefully worded and intriguing voicemail. About 3 weeks later, I received a call from someone in that company's financial department. And a few weeks after that, I sat down with most of the key financial decision makers in their company for over an hour and a half. Turns out their organization was presently working on a project directly related to the services I had called them about. For confidentiality reasons, I can't say who they were, but I will say that the company's assets were well over $12 billion, and yet one voicemail opened a door that wouldn't have opened with my website, for sure. Now, I didn't share these little tidbits to boast of my cold calling skills, but there are some truths here that I'd like to point out. The radio shows needed interesting content because they're talk radio. They got to have something to talk about. They need something to talk about. And then the big company that I had been consulting for needed what I had to offer, but they had no idea who I was until I called them. They didn't know I existed. Likewise, there are a whole lot of people, places, organizations, corporations, churches, ministries, potential partners, friends, allies, who right now don't even know you exist. If they don't know you exist, how can they value you? How can they know that you got a vision from God? How can they know you got a purpose from God? They don't even know you exist yet. And so some type of action will have to be taken to cause them to become aware of you. Now, regardless of the means or the method used to create that awareness, the bottom line is that a decision must be made that will move you and your destiny in the direction that you're aiming for. Now, while this applies to things like business and ministry and all that, it also applies to every possible intention you could ever have. While an intention might be fulfilled by mere chance or luck or even the kindness of strangers, I've never been one to want to leave my destiny in the hands of others. And neither should you. We must then understand that productive intentions coupled with decisions are ultimately what are going to drive our success. Therefore, we should consider how to make better decisions. Right? Now, let me give you a few strategies for making better decisions. And I'll give you 8 of them. First one is to decide quickly. The philosopher William James is credited with having said that once a decision is made, you ought to stop worrying and start working. General George S. Patton once said that a good idea or a good plan violently executed today is better than a perfect plan next week. Now, I'm not suggesting you to be hasty or thoughtless in how you make decisions, but rather that you focus on what needs to be decided, shut everything else out, and then calmly, rationally, make your call, make your pick. A lot of us were stifled and we're stagnated in the pursuit of our destiny because we won't make a decision. Another thing that will help your decision-making ability is to take a break. One thing I found as a writer, as an artist, is that even when you're passionate about what you're doing, sometimes you need a break. Communicating your vision, whether in art and business, involves making many decisions. I know I'm an artist, and I've, I'm not as prolific as others, but I've probably drawn at least 400 pages of comics. And there's a lot of decisions you got to make to put together a comic page about the story, about the the things that you're drawing, about the composition of the page. And sometimes we can get too bogged down in the details and we overthink what we're doing. There was a study that was done at Carnegie Mellon University that found that a 2 minute break led to better decisions. So people were making decisions for a while, take a 2 minute break, you actually make better decisions. When subjects were sidetracked by a brief number sequence memorization exercise, they actually made better decisions. Because while the conscious mind focuses on the distraction, the unconscious mind is still weighing the options. Your spirit man is still considering the options. Third thing, and this one is going to seem, someone's going to be uncomfortable and seems a little silly. Drink a lot of water and hold it in for 45 minutes. And so, like I said, it's an uncomfortable strategy. If you're really stuck, this might be your ticket. There's an assistant professor at the University of Twente in the Netherlands came up with a very clever idea for a study when she had an urgent need to visit the ladies' room in the middle of a long lecture. She became curious as to what happens to people's decision-making ability when they have to exercise a high level of bladder control, when they really got to pee. Her study found that people actually made better choices when their bladders were full. But an extreme urgency was not necessary. So apparently the need to exercise impulse control in one area influences our impulse control in other unrelated areas. Now, I don't use this particular strategy often myself, but it's not bad to have it as an option if you're stuck. It's just like how they say don't go grocery shopping when you're hungry. Why? Because your impulse is going to influence your decisions. And most people can't really shut down that particular impulse. Another thing you do to make better decisions is to narrow your options. Sometimes we have what I like to refer to as choice overload. Too many options. And it's like I've said to many people on many broadcasts, even with things like the prophetic. You're pursuing your destiny. You're trying to get some kind of guidance from some kind of prophetic voice, but you listen to 56 different prophets. And then you wonder why you're confused. You need to narrow down the choices because not everybody deserves to have a voice in your life. Not everybody should be a voice in your life. And it's the same thing with all other choices that we make. A lot of us have choice overload, and sometimes having too many options to consider will weaken your information gathering skills by diluting your focus. Most people can really only handle about 11 items in their working memory at a time. Some people will say 7, and for most people it's probably 7. If that's not reason enough, consider that you really only should be trying to choose among the best options. Because remember, you're trying to take your vision to the next level. You're trying to become everything that God intended you to be. Christ didn't die for you to be 90% of what he called you to be. So why even consider the options that aren't? Take the best options. What options are worthy of the very best of your vision? The greatest business leaders of our time probably don't spend much time considering option number 346. They're going to narrow it down. And so should you. Number 5, go outside. There was a study done in Environmental Health Perspectives that found that volunteers in a role-playing exercise made worse decisions when carbon dioxide levels were higher, like in a crowded or stuffy room. And by the same token, conversely rather, people in the study made better decisions when they had breathing room. Go figure. When I'm writing or working on anything, I frequently take breaks. And especially now that I live out in the country, I go outside. I get some fresh air, or I'll exercise a bit. Some of the best passages of my novels are written in my mind while I'm walking through the woods where I live. So I got a little bit of forest in my backyard, and actually behind there's about another 40 acres. It's not mine, but it's back there. And so sometimes I walk around in the woods. And some of the most successful ideas I've ever come up with for my clients happen while just fooling around in my studio. And sometimes the outside you need is not necessarily the outdoors. Sometimes it's just something that's outside of what you're doing. When I was writing the second chapter of the book I'm teaching out of right now, that chapter is called Learn to Trust the Truth, and we've got a couple videos on that. There was an acquaintance of mine, and he was part of a mastermind group that I was running at the time, had asked for advice on what to do with an upcoming meeting with a big prospect. And I watched some very silly and completely unrelated videos on YouTube, and the idea hit me. And it was he was about to possibly have a chance to sign a contract with a big dating site, and because he was trying to be some kind of relationship expert, and he wanted to partner with them. And so I gave him a great idea, which was a YouTube campaign that would feature nightmare scenario blind dates. They show several different scenarios of nightmare blind dates, and then they would show the logo of the dating site, and then they'd say, "We won't let this happen to you." And then the last nightmare blind date would be like a little gray alien who winks and says, "How you doing?" And but they loved the idea, and but got that idea just doing something completely unrelated. Stuck on a decision, go outside. Number 6, get opinions and advice from competent people. The book of Proverbs says, without counsel, purposes are disappointed, but in the multitude of counselors they are established. If you think this isn't true, consider how many advisors and consultants world leaders and CEOs often have. I mean, my goodness, the total number of staff that either work in the White House or do work related to the White House is like 3,000 or 4,000 people. And several dozen of them are various types of advisors and consultants. Go figure. Now, you may not have the resources right now to assemble a team of people that you can pool opinions from. I get that. However, there are ways to assemble groups of competent people to assist in your vision. One of those is to start or join a masterminding group. I started one with a few other entrepreneurs a few years ago for my own business ventures, and over the years I've run several mastermind groups. In all of these, I get help. I get to help others solve their business problems, and in turn, I get to leverage their knowledge and experience. And that helps me when I'm stuck. Now, number 7 is to consider all your options at once, not sequentially. Sequentially selected choices have a tendency to make us hope that the next possible choice is better. And for most of us, this is going to prejudice our decision making. We look at one car, and then we look at the next, and we're hoping this one's going to be the one. And then that tends to, we end up being biased, and we end up picking a car that's got problems, or picking a car that we're not happy with. There was a woman who wrote a book, Sheena Iyengar is her name. It's called The Art of Choosing. And she found that people who saw all their options at once were more satisfied with the choice they made. So give that a try in your next decision. If you got to write your different options down on a piece of paper so you can see them all at the same time, try that. Number 8, fast forward your projected outcomes. There's really no such thing as an action without consequences. And over the years, I've found that my best decisions come when I've considered the possible outcomes and pictured for myself where those outcomes would take me down the road. It's a lady by the name of Susie Welch. She wrote a book called 10-10-10. It's a life transformation idea book. She advocates an approach to decision making in which you ask yourself, where will this decision take you in 10 minutes? Where will it take you in 10 months? Where will it take you in 10 years? And by looking at your decisions in terms of their consequences and results, you can position yourself to make decisions that will be more conducive to the destiny that you're trying to get to. Number 9, count the cost of inaction. As one man likes to say, you will either know the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. Conventional thinking tells us to count the cost of what we intend to do, but many of us often fail to do the same when it comes to the cost of not taking action. How many potential clients or opportunities or ministry engagements or souls saved do you miss out on every week, every month, every year that you don't take action? Now multiply that by the results you expect from each one of those interactions or each one of those things. If it's a business, multiply that by the amount of money you think you'd make on each one that you're missing out on. It adds up, doesn't it? And you do that, and you've got a pretty good thumbnail sketch of what it's going to cost you to just sit there hemming and hawing about what to do instead of doing it. Now, I'd be remiss in my intention to inspire you in the pursuit of your vision if I didn't offer a practical exercise to help you use these strategies. So here's what I want you to do. Take a sheet of paper, and across the top, on the very first line, write down an intention. Keep it simple. Next, ask yourself 5 questions about that intention. Write the questions down, and then later on, maybe take a break, come back to it, and start writing down answers. Try to answer those questions. Now, based on the answers to those questions, ask yourself which decisions are most likely to manifest that intention. Once you've done that, use one or more of those decision-making strategies we discussed to decide what to do about that intention, and then take some immediate action each day to support that decision. Record your results, and then compare this process to how you used to make decisions. And I think you're going to find a significant difference between the two. Now, some people might encourage you to test this exercise with unimportant decisions. No. I feel like I was insulting if I told you, oh, try this with a decision that doesn't matter. And you're just wasting your time. I want to tell you, use it on an important decision. When the stakes are low, we often tend to put less than our best foot forward. So if you're going to make the effort to do this exercise, it may as well be done in the interest of a real decision that's going to move you toward the greatness that you know God has called you to. Now, once you've done this exercise a few times, you'll find that even the decisions you make without writing anything down are going to start to improve as you learn how to form productive intentions. Because that's the point of it. You don't have to do this for every decision. I rarely do it myself because I've learned how to do this, and now eventually it becomes fast. Don't try to do it fast at first. It's like they say in martial arts: fast is slow, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. You practice slowly, and eventually it becomes smooth, and then smooth becomes fast. And so you will start to improve at forming productive intentions, and your decision-making process is going to become more focused, and it's going to become more smooth. Now, engaging in your destiny and becoming everything that God has intended you to be is going to require you to make some changes. There may even be risks involved. However, once we understand what I call the law of intention and decision, we can revise our decisions, make better decisions, and thereby position ourselves to reap the rewards of the destiny God has called us to. A few years ago, I had a chance to speak with a man who's an Olympic gold medalist, Mark McCoy. I believe he had a gold medal in, I forget which hurdle event, but he was a hurdler. And he actually let me wear his gold medal, which was kind of neat. They're heavy. I think I got a picture somewhere wearing his gold medal. Uh, but I was fascinated by the story of his journey to becoming an Olympic gold medalist. And I asked him about the role of intention and decision in his own success. And he was gracious enough to share his thoughts on the matter. And he said action is the key. He said most of my fellow teammates, I feel, didn't take action. They didn't take the action that is required to be the best, even though they were much more talented than I was. But they didn't become gold medalists. He did. He felt they were actually better than him. And he said, I traveled. I went to the best coaches in the world I could find, from the U.S. to Europe. I did whatever it took. I went wherever I had to go. I spent money I didn't have. Whatever it took, I did it. Nobody else did. And you see this with people who are high achievers in any field. They do things that other people are not willing to do. And I'm going to say this to you. To have what you've never had, you got to do what you've never done. Now, it probably won't surprise you that he set a record in the 100-meter hurdles that stood for, I forget how many years it stood for, but it was a long time till somebody broke his record. There's got to be a willingness to do what other people won't do. That's part of why God called you to do what He's called you to do, because somebody else won't do it. It's part of why He gave you the vision He did, because He can't give it to the guy down the street. The guy down the street's not going to do it. So whether it's pounding the phone for 15 hours a day as a rookie stockbroker, or the kind of obsessive commitment to excellence that produces Olympic gold, you've got to be willing to do what others are not willing to do. One of the most unfortunate truths of life is that a lot of people go through it without any purpose or direction. A lot of the saints have no purpose or direction. And so even the intentions they do have and the decisions they do make often fail to achieve the results they'd like. And so I'd like you to take some time implementing what we've discussed tonight. Don't wait. In fact, when we're done with this broadcast, I dare you to do some of these exercises. And if you do, I promise you, you will see how the law of intention and decision will work in your life. I hope this is useful. I hope it was helpful. If it was, feel free to share it. Meanwhile, God bless you and God keep you.